'Tis the season to advertise your business's holiday specials and sales events. Don't miss out on Cayman's #1 social media, talk show, and website platforms to spread your message to thousands of people locally and abroad. Christmas dining and entertainment venues? Call us today. Retail shopping for special friends and family? Call us today. Christmas rentals and accommodations? Call us today. Cayman's #1 news platform is the best way to reach the largest available audience, resulting in more sales for your business. Contact CMR today at sales@caymanmarlroad.com or 324-1612.
We've got a special guest in the studio this morning, Dr. Michael Snipes. He's been on the program before. We want to thank him for coming back. He's an associate professor of instruction of economics at USF, the Sarasota Manatee campus. He also, with a joint appointment in the Muma College of Business, he has an MA, 2004, he obtained that, and a PhD from 2008 from the University of Colorado, Boulder. And he has his BA from the University of Texas, Austin. So Dr. Snipes has taught at the Eastern New Mexico University for several years. And his current area of research interest is tourism and its effects on the economy. We can talk about him about that too. He's conducted research on family dynamics and the links between macroeconomic fluctuations and suicide. So Dr. Snipes has a very, very interesting set of credentials and background. We'd like to take this opportunity to invite him to the program. Good morning, Dr. Snipes. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing?
Very well. We like the floral shirt today. It looks very islandy in a way.
Thank you. Yes, it's appropriate for Florida as well.
Yes, beautiful. So how have you been?
I've been well. Been pretty busy. My semester wrapped up a couple days ago, so
okay.
Been working with the media a lot.
Enjoy the holiday season now a little bit.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So, of course, big shout out to Kevin Watler, who booked you to come on the program today. I know the last time you were on, we talked about a number of different economy related topics. And this time we want to talk a little bit about, here we are in the holiday season. People get very, very stressed out about their budget and spending and, all these sorts of things. Why do people feel such pressure during the holidays to overspend and to spend money that simply a lot of times they do not have?
Yeah, well, you want to provide good memories. You want to provide good feelings for your family and for your friends. And so there's definitely going to be that pressure to do that. I also think that there's, kind of that keeping up with the Joneses kind of mentality that if I see that, my neighbor was able to, give their children everything they wanted, but I was able to give only kind of half, then, there's kind of that feeling as well. So there's definitely more pressure to, I'd say kind of more of a emotional or social pressure to do well during the holidays. And that is one thing that, can definitely feed into kind of those budgetary pressures that you mentioned just a second ago.
Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses. A lot of us, unfortunately, understand that sentiment all too well. So, we're hoping today that you can definitely give us some recommendations on how not to get into that mindset. When you talk about creating memories, though, many years ago, I was reading something and it said something to the fact that instead of like giving people presents to create memories, you do things with people. You maybe take a holiday, you travel, you do, and there's options of doing things that can be relatively inexpensive to create that sort of experience as opposed to it being connected to like an actual gift, right? So is that perhaps one of the recommendations that you would put out there about how to create these meaningful memories around the holidays?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I would recommend. That I've talked with a couple of different media outlets, and that's definitely something that I would recommend, especially if you have kind of, maybe 10, 11-year-olds or maybe a little bit older, when they're going to actually start to remember some of these things that you do for them. I think that's going to form kind of more of a core memory. And that's something that they're going to carry with them throughout their entire life than, getting them some toy that they wanted or some Lego set that they wanted. So definitely if you have, 10-year-olds or older, that's something that I would definitely recommend. And that's probably going to be a lot cheaper potentially than, just spending it on things that they don't necessarily, need. And yeah, that's definitely so forming kind of those core memories, experiences matter more than kind of material goods, especially kind of in their teenage years. So that's definitely something that, is a way that people could save a little bit of money.
Yeah, absolutely. So, folks, if you're just tuning into the program, we're talking to Dr. Snipes this morning, who's an associate professor at USF. And he's trying to give us some really salient advice on how not to financially stress yourself out over the holidays. Of course, we all feel like our kids need the latest gadgets, which can be super expensive. One of the things I heard yesterday, which I thought was super interesting, and Dr. Snipes, for your benefit, we've been talking this week about minimum wage, and everybody's complaining that $6 an hour is not enough. That's Cayman dollars for the minimum wage, and we need to increase the minimum wage. And then I hear a statistic like this. Listen to how incredibly just fascinating this is, but at the same time, it gives us a good deal of insight into how our people are spending their money and how they're operating, right? So there are 5,000 phones out there on the Flow network alone. I don't know what other providers might have even more, but there's 5,000 iPhones on the Flow network that are not connected to any data plan at all. So what that means is that people are buying a $1,400, $1,500 phone, right? Spending that type of cash, and they don't even have the money to connect it to data, to get a data plan. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, when I heard that, I was like, wait, 5,000 people? And these would be the same people who are complaining that they're making minimum wage. Helpers and kids and whatever. Oh, I got to have an iPhone. No, you don't. But you're going to spend that kind of money on an iPhone, and then you can't even afford to put a data plan on it. Or you're going to spend money on that fancy car just to be able to say you're driving a fancy car. And every month you're killing yourself to try to make that loan payment, but you don't even have a garage to put the car in or a decent house to park the car outside of. It just boggles my mind.
Yeah, that's definitely that social pressure that I think a lot of people feel. And that's something that's very tough to get over. Mm-hmm. It kind of causes that cognitive pain. And, there's that look at kind of the effects that the brain feels when it's dealing with money. And that's definitely tied in with this, that, the part of the brain that gets stimulated is the same part of the brain that gets stimulated when people consume cocaine or consume drugs. So it's really kind of that primitive response that we have to money and seeing other people seeing things that we don't have. And it kind of creates that disconnect, and it really does in a very physical sense, kind of create that primal response that we're not doing enough. I'm not, I don't have enough resources. And so it does kind of cause that pain. And so it's really kind of more, kind of that social pressure, so they have something I don't, they must be better than I do. It kind of causes that psychic pain. And so that's definitely something that, while surprising, is not, I guess, too surprising. Because if all you were interested in was a phone that could, text or make calls, there's all kinds of cheap plans and cheap phones out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's definitely that social pressure.
Yeah, to be able to say that, I have a certain brand phone. Yeah, that social pressure, it's a lot. And, we talk about peer pressure in different ways and stuff as well. Even our kids are having to, succumb to peer pressure, bullying, and other things. How do you said it's difficult when everybody else around you is trying to do the exact same thing. We have this mentality of like everybody's trying to keep up with each other. But is there anything like concrete that a person can do to not feel the societal pressure to keep up with anybody else? I mean, for me, I personally just try to keep it real, right? So when I see people purchasing and stuff and doing stuff, I think to myself, that's none of my business. Because my aunt always told me as a young child, and that's one of the messages that she just reinforced in my head, is that you don't look at what people have because you don't know how they got it, right? So she's like, they could have been working 24/7 to get it, killing themselves, giving themselves a heart attack. They might have stolen it. She says, the point is you don't know. So don't worry about what other people have and simply don't focus on it. Just focus on yourself.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And that's kind of the approach that I try to take, that you don't really have any control over what other people do, what other people have, what other people say. So really kind of the best that you can do is just kind of focus on kind of what you can control. And whether that's, what you're spending your money on for presents or not spending your money on for presents, focusing on experiences with your family, with your core group, with your friends. That I think that's definitely one thing, that an approach, that's something that people could take during the holiday seasons to kind of maybe avoid some of those negative feelings and also save some money at the same time.
All right. So, folks, if you have a question for Dr. Snipes, 936-2626 is a telephone number. You can certainly give us a call. We are here for you this morning. If you're one of those people that's feeling overly pressured to spend this Christmas and holiday season, Miss Ruby says she loves your shirt.
Thank
Jim
you.
says, give people some of your time. And there are things that you can make. If you are an arts craft type of person, there are things that you can make that can create amazing memories. Like one of my friends this year, I can't say what it is because she might actually be listening to her show. She might be listening this morning, but I actually had something made for her that wasn't necessarily like uber expensive. But I know that when she sees it, oh my God, it's going to just melt her heart because it's personal, right? It's custom to her. It's personal. It's like family related and that sort of thing. So there are a lot of options, folks out there. You just got to get a little bit creative. Like if somebody in your life likes to read, get them a book. Books don't tend to break the bank. There's a lot of options available. I love Jim's suggestion of giving people your time. So, your grandma doesn't need a new iPhone. Believe me, she doesn't know how to use 99% of the features. Go and just sit down with grandma, spend an afternoon with grandma, maybe cook grandma a little meal. There's a lot of creative things that you can do because the truth of the matter is, Dr. Snipes, is that after the holiday seasons, like we go into it with a high. Everybody's excited now. We get these big, beautiful Christmas trees. We want to fill the Christmas tree, with presents underneath. And then coming out of that, we are all depressed coming into the new year because we've got tons of bills that we have to pay. We do have a caller who's joining the program. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Sandra, and to
Morning.
your guest panel.
Yes, thank you.
The topic this morning is very what should I say it now? Educational, learning, and one of the pinpoints, and it's going to be very short. I think what people need to realize and need to grab the grips and grasp of is need and want.
Yes.
It's like they say if you're gonna do shopping, don't go shopping on an empty stomach. Just you buy things, you pick up things that it happens to them more than once. You go to the supermarket and then but you end up with instead of a hand cart, you're pulling a trolley.
Yes, it's true.
And just like you said with the cell phone, you're gonna go and you're gonna pick up the latest gadgets, and you don't have no minutes. You're gonna beg somebody to, give me a car. You have the latest phone. You're gonna buy the biggest and expensive car. You don't have gas. You see some of those expensive cars driving down the road, and then the window wind down. You're gonna be the AC. You're gonna buy. The boys going to the point. I just want to put it out there. Put in the book, put some of the stickers.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate that comment. All right. And that's a good one. That's a really good one, distinguishing between your wants and your needs. I don't think there's much around Christmas that falls into the needs category, though, because you don't even need to celebrate Christmas. All of it really is about wanting, but you've got to dial it back, I think, is the sound advice. I'm sure that Dr. Snipes would agree with. You can have wants within your budget. So let's talk about budgeting. Is that a good idea to go into Christmas knowing how much money you actually want to spend?
Yeah, that's a good idea for any time of year, but especially during Christmas. And I kind of want to go back to one of the things that the caller was kind of bringing up. And there is something that I think that there definitely is a need during Christmas, is that we as humans we're social creatures, and we kind of crave that connectedness that I think a lot of people need. And I think that that's one of those things that we can do during the Christmas season, especially, is kind of seek those avenues of connectedness that don't necessarily require any kind of outlay of cash. But if we do want to have some sort of spending, then making sure that you have a budget and you stay on budget, that's a very good idea. But one of the things that you can also do that kind of builds upon that is that if we are kind of seeking that gift giving avenue or kind of that material avenue, which is fine, there's really this idea that I think is more important than income or prices, and it's this idea of what we call purchasing power. And purchasing power is essentially just how much stuff I can afford to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And budgeting is a big part of that, right? The more money I have, the more stuff I can afford to buy. But at the same time, if prices are high, then that's going to bring down my purchasing power. So yeah, knowing what you have, what you have available to spend is important, but we also need to keep track of where prices are. So at least here in the United States, we're starting to see inflation rates come down. I don't know. I tend to be a little bit more pessimistic, so I'm not ready to say that we've peaked quite yet. But definitely numbers are looking good. So inflation numbers are coming down, but the way that inflation is calculated, it's calculated in a specific way. And I think the best way to think about what an inflation rate is just an average price. So what's happening with prices on average. So it's entirely possible that we could have, a big chunk of the economy that's seeing prices go up. But if the rest of the economy is seeing prices go down or stay the same, well, then we can actually have average prices going down. And so I mentioned that because if you are looking to give a gift, then there are definitely going to be gifts that are going to be more affordable that can still be meaningful. So again, at least here in the United States, the price of apparel is going down because for so long people just weren't buying clothes, because they were in lockdown. And if you're in lockdown and you're working from home, you don't necessarily need a new suit, right? So there was a lot of kind of backlog in clothing that now manufacturers are trying to get rid of. So that's one part of the economy where you can get a really good deal is on clothing. And so, yeah, knowing what your budget is, that's certainly important. But if you do just kind of a little bit of a research and just a little bit of looking, you can find where prices are actually going to be very reasonable. And you can get at what you really care about is the amount of stuff that you can consume. If you're careful about looking at different parts of the economy and where things are actually looking a little bit good, you can find some good deals out there.
Awesome. I mean, our situation here tends to be a little bit different in terms of some of the deals that we can find. But Damien talks about, how dopamine fix is one of the things. And I got to tell you, I'm a shopper and I love bargains in particular. So I am a bargain shopper, which is good. So I don't necessarily have to go out there and spend top dollar to feel like I'm having a good time. But I do like to shop. And then my love language is also giving. So this is like the worst time of year for me, honey chill. But what I have done, Dr. Snipes, is I have kept my list of people that I will even think about giving a present to very, very, very short. Because then that, and then sometimes you think, right, just set a limit, $25 per person. So that's kind of what works for me, knowing my personality type already, someone who enjoys shopping just for the sake of shopping. As Damien says, I get a little bit of a high off of it. I'm not going to smoke anything to get a high. I'll just go shopping. But there are ways to keep it kind of under control. So searching for those bargains, going to, everybody loves a name brand, but you can find name brand clothing at places like, what are they called? Ross and Marshalls and these types of, stores. It's one season old and I look at the outfit and says, who cares? Like, how do you know what season this outfit was? It doesn't have to be a couture purchase or anything of that sort. But some people I've noticed have to, like, I have acquaintances that I look at them and man, they're always on point with the dress and the name brand and the glasses and this and that. Just this past week, I had a little situation with someone who, needed some assistance getting some glasses for a child. And they said, hey, Sandy, need some help with this situation. And I did not mind helping at all. And then I heard that they were like $800 glasses. And I said, very, very honestly, and these are the kind of honest conversations we need to be having with each other. I said, listen, honey, chill. I'm now wearing glasses again because my little LASIK surgery wore off after so many years, but I'm not buying $800 glasses for myself. So why is a young person or child spending $800 on glasses? You got to know that you have to live, especially when, truth be known, you can't really afford to buy it. You need to live within a budget. So every single thing that you spend, is it not a good idea, Dr. Snipes, to say, I am willing to, AKA budget, I'm going to only spend $250 for this item. And every single month you can dedicate to, right, this month outside of my rent and food expenses and so on, my budget for these other things is X dollar amount. And I even said to the mother, I said, did you know that every single, I think it's like August or September, these eyeglass places actually have a going back to school sale where practically everything in the store is 50% off. So work it around, oops, my apologies. Work it around your schedule, folks, where you don't have to buy a pair of glasses in December, because maybe the time to get the best deal on your glasses actually isn't December. Maybe it's August, you know? And the same thing with clothing, right? Shop around when you know you're going to get some really good deals. When it's tax-free week, for example, that's a good time to shop because you spend a lot of money in taxes, I find.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And again, it kind of goes back to that, what I mentioned a couple minutes ago, that there's been a lot of studies in kind of an area that kind of is a bit of an overlap between like psychology and economics called behavioral economics, which really kind of looks at how people really make decisions. So one of the things that, most kind of traditional economics assumes is that, people are almost robotic in the way that they treat money and robotic in the way that they, treat the economy and interact with people. But there's been kind of this rise in economics and behavioral economics saying that, no, I mean, people are driven by, or could be potentially be driven by emotion. And that's one of the things that a lot of kind of traditional economic models tend to ignore. And again, it just kind of referencing that study that found that, kind of the part of the brain that gets stimulated when it comes to money, when it comes to, because that's another way that we can view, that somebody has these designer glasses or their new iPhone or something like that. We can view that as a form of competition in some sense. And so really what happens is, our lizard brain, kind of that uncontrollable, at least unconscious part of the brain, gets stimulated by money, gets stimulated by these forms of competition, because we're not really necessarily competing for, food or shelter or sex anymore. It's really kind of these other forms of competition. And that does get stimulated in our brain, kind of that lizard part of our brain gets stimulated. And so that's part of what drives us to maybe spend more than we have. Is like you said, and like somebody noted, kind of that dopamine kick. It's very easy to get a hold of that and kind of be driven by that.
So you've got to think about, and I'm glad that you mentioned this, because even with food, a lot of our memories and how we treat food really comes from like an emotional place, very, very deep seated. I mean, I'm someone who often, you guys hear me jokingly, but not so jokingly, confess to really loving food, because some of my best memories and celebrations and Thanksgiving and times with the family, it's all about, oh my God, and that turkey and ham dinner was so good, and that sweet potato pie was on point. So it's like you make memories surrounding certain things, and we make a lot of memories surrounding food and eating, with our families and so on. So I totally get and understand the emotional connection that we have to money. And, people who grew up very, very poor, the second they get a little bit of money, this is one of the things that we see. And I, when I read The Millionaire Next Door, it really opened my eyes a little bit more into how we fall into these traps, these emotional traps of how we see money and how we will then treat money for the rest of our lives. And, educating yourselves, talking to an expert like Dr. Snipes, reading a book to kind of get you to tweak and to understand, wow, I don't have to overspend. I don't have to go out there and buy these big chains and all this stuff that is for what purpose? It's just to show to other people that now I have money in life because I grew up poor. And maybe when I was a kid, people bullied me and made fun of me because I didn't have these items. Now as an adult, because, you've made a couple dollars, the first thing you do is try to show to those people, oh, look, I've arrived. I've made it because I can, have all these material things that really are an outward projection of probably some really internal and innate issues that I'm having as an individual. And we see it all the time. Like every single rapper practically, becomes a rapper. The first thing they're going to go spend money on is the big chains and necklaces and the grill. It's like, why? Right? It's like,
I must admit that I'm at least somewhat guilty of this too, because, I didn't grow up rich or anything. I mean, certainly didn't grow up poor either. But, when I got my first real job and got my first real paycheck, one of the first things I did was, probably frivolous spending. I went out and bought a box set of one of my favorite bands that was a couple $100, but so some of that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting that we're kind of talking about kind of this more kind of emotion and feeling over money. And, some of the best gifts I've gotten were family recipes and family, just kind of greater extended family, moving into friends, were some of these recipes that people would hand down to me. You say, like, oh, the turkey was awesome. And for me, it was always the, Ann Shrewsbury's mashed potatoes were kind of the thing that I connected with. And so, when she gave me that recipe, that meant a lot. And that's something that's kind of a tradition that you can carry through. And that's a gift that you can give that's going to be a lot more meaningful and have a lot more emotional impact really throughout your entire life.
Interesting. Are you willing to share her recipe with me?
I'll send it to you in the email. It's real good.
All right. So Barbara says, I raise my kids to understand ready-made only means that something is already made. You can learn to make it for yourself. Other thing was, if I'm going to advertise somebody's name on my clothes, they should be paying me, not me being for not something seems to be missing there, but me being for their advertisement. So that's a very, very interesting point. Again, we see it all the time where we want to see a certain logo, a certain design or whatever on clothing for us to think that, we're getting value. But listen, the great things about a lot of these outlet stores and stuff, you can get the name brand stuff, but there's a way for you to pay a fraction of the price. You don't have to pay full price for that stuff. So, if you like a Michael Kors bag, hey, I like Michael Kors designs, but I'm not going to pay full price for it. I'm going to go to the outlet stores. I'm going to catch it when it's on sale, and then we can talk. So Damien says that Jeff Bezos from Amazon has tripled his wealth during the COVID lockdown, especially, which is interesting. A lot of people are home with access to computer and the internet and nothing else to do, apparently. They were doing a lot of online shopping. And Amazon is addictive. Is there such a thing yet? Have anybody written a book on Amazon addictions? Because I feel like Amazon is very addictive.
Well, there's studies that have looked at, people can become addicted to, video games. They can become addicted to the internet. So it wouldn't surprise me if people have looked specifically at Amazon. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know off the top of my head, but no, absolutely. People can become addicted to the internet, to all these different things.
Yeah, definitely. I just love scrolling and the way that they have the website designed. Where
and they're they know what they're doing. Yeah, they design it in a very specific way. There are people who this is their job and their livelihood is to trigger those emotions, trigger those lizard brain reactions. And that's, they know what they're doing.
Yep. And then it's so interesting that they see you purchase one thing and they're going to make recommendations. Ooh, you liked that item. You purchased that item. Here's something else you might like. And you're like, oh, yes. When you really don't need it.
Yeah, that's a huge part of a branch of statistics called big data and analyzing big data. And as we become more and more and more online, that's something that's going to become more and more important to understand kind of how it works. Because you'll create a profile, a purchasing profile, and then they're going to compare it against millions of different users and say, who do you look most like? And if I look, it may be that I buy a book and they recommend a shovel. Why did they recommend a shovel? Because they compared you against a million other people and saying your purchases look a lot like this person's purchases. They bought a shovel, so hey, you want a shovel? And I can pretty much guarantee that you'll go, now that I think about it, I do need a shovel. So there's all kinds of data and all kinds of statistics and statistical methods out there that they know what to do. Right? They know how to set it up. They know how to get you to spend money. I mean, it's an entire branch of study. In it could be marketing, it could be in statistics, it could be in any number of branches. I mean, this is what is taught is how to get people to spend more than they necessarily would.
Wow, super interesting.
And I've taught colleges of business. I've taught in schools of social science, and I've sat in on some of these classes, and this is what is taught is, how can I get somebody to spend more than they maybe otherwise necessarily would?
Yeah. And one of the things that Amazon does now is, how they have the Amazon Live where they use influencers and people that you trust to review products and talk about products. And it's kind of like, remember back in the day we had CVC? What was the shopping network called? CVS?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever they were called, right? And I think they're still kind of around. There might be some of those still, but you could sit there all day and watch a TV station dedicated to just demoing products. I mean, I always thought it was crazy. Like, how did they find so many products and so many content? But there were literally products that went viral because they made it on those shopping networks, home shopping network, or whatever they were called. And people just sit there all day with a credit card in hand, being convinced by someone that you need to buy this item and you need to shop for this item. Now Amazon has jumped into it. Every single time you go on Amazon, they have a whole section where it's like an Amazon Live. I'm actually looking at it right now. There's a lady in there. She's got 968 people watching the live, and she's going through reviewing all of the different products. I'm going to show you guys in case you don't know about this. Not that I want you to get addicted to any more shopping, but she's going through reviewing all of the items that are coming up for the deals of the day and talking about, and Amazon pays good money to have these individuals do exactly that. They will sit down and live stream. And the more they sell, there she is, this young lady. And to be honest, she doesn't have 981 is not a whole lot of people. Sometimes I've seen some influencers have into the thousands of people watching. And so she's going through each one of these products, talking about the benefits of each one, why you'd want to get it. So right now she's talking about this hat. Notice she's also wearing the hat. So there's a lot of psychology in here, folks, built into getting you to be separated from your hard-earned money. So I guess just like anything else in life, there might be certain pitfalls that you got to avoid. If you know that you're influenced, pun intended, by seeing someone wearing a certain product and have the hat on, then talking about it, look, it's on sale, you're going to save $5 today, just don't go to Amazon.com. Stay off of it. Try to avoid certain triggers and certain, things that might make you want to spend even more money. So let's talk about, before we let you go, Dr. Snipes, let's talk quickly about the current state of the economy. So we saw yesterday that the Feds decided to increase the interest rate again. They did it by a smaller percentage this time. So talk to me a little bit about, what's going on. It looks like they're starting to slow things down a little bit, but they're not yet ready to pump the brakes on increasing interest rates.
Sure. And this actually ties in pretty directly to holiday spending, believe it or not. I mean, it seems like they're completely unrelated things, but they're related in an important way here in just a second. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think first off, I think it's important to know why they're doing this in the first place.
Right.
So what is the basic idea of why they're doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the 30-second version is, if I increase interest rates, then saving money becomes more attractive than spending money. Because if I put my money in the bank and I can earn 5% interest as opposed to 2% interest, not that those numbers are realistic, but if I can earn 5% interest over 2% interest, then saving that money becomes more attractive than spending the money. Mm-hmm. And so if I put money in the bank and don't spend it, well, then that's going to reduce consumer spending. And then the thinking goes that if we can kind of bring consumer spending down a little bit, that's one of those things that can help control inflation. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the basic strategy that they're using there to try and bring inflation rates. Where I live in the Tampa Bay area, we had inflation rates, I think they topped out at about like 9.5%, mm-hmm. which is really, really high for the United States. And we are starting to see some pretty positive reports coming out the past couple months when the government has released their statistics. The numbers have looked very good. And, especially in the labor market has essentially recovered to the point where we're back to pre-COVID levels and pre-COVID numbers, which is great. So 2023 is looking pretty good, at least for my region, and I would say for the country as a whole. But kind of going back to holiday spending, one of the things that we are seeing is again, if wages are kind of stagnant, but we still have prices going up, inflation is still a problem. That's going to eat into that idea again of purchasing power, just kind of the amount of stuff that I can afford to buy. That's going to eat into that. Well, one of the ways that you can kind of avoid that or kind of get around that is opening up lines of credit by borrowing.
Okay.
And that's one of those things that, if borrowing and lending of money, that's fine. But kind of the longer you carry it, the more expensive it becomes because you have to pay interest on it. And so one of the things that I think a lot of people may not necessarily think about, because this is something that, you may not pay off your credit card spending, your holiday spending, that may not get paid off for 3-4 months. Well, the thing is, when we have the Federal Reserve increasing interest rates, what that's going to do is that's going to eventually, it's a slow process, especially with interest rates, but eventually what's going to happen is all interest rates are going to go up. And that includes mortgages, car payments, that includes credit cards. So if you open up a new credit card account in order to try and keep up with holiday spending now, in 4 or 5 months, when it's time to pay back that debt that you acquired in November and December, well, because of the Federal Reserve interest rate increases, it's going to be very likely that you're going to be paying more interest on that credit card debt that you have. So because the Federal Reserve is increasing interest rates, that's something that's going to flow into the rest of the economy and increase interest rates on all other kinds of debt. So any debt that you take out now is absolutely going to be more expensive in 5 or 6 months. And this could potentially spread to the entire world. I wouldn't necessarily think that it's going to be kind of a global issue, because there are things that governments can do to kind of bring interest rates back down. So this is really kind of something that would kind of be circulating, kind of stuck in the United States,
right?
Most likely. But the general idea applies regardless of where you are. If interest rates go up, then any debt that's held becomes more expensive. And I don't think that that's something that people really kind of make that connection, that it seems so abstract. It's monetary policy, it's quantitative easing, it's all of these big buzzwords and economics jargon that gets thrown around. But it's really, if interest rates go up, then all debt becomes more expensive. It becomes more expensive to hold debt. And that's something that people absolutely need to keep in mind, especially that it's very, very tempting to go out and take out a loan. It's very easy for most people to go out and take a loan. And if I can take out a loan now, then, hey, I get the consumption now, I get the spending now, I get that dopamine kick now. Well, in 4 or 5 months, when we have these ripple effects to the economy, what I signed up for at maybe 5% interest now all of a sudden is 8% interest. Well, that 3% may not seem like very much, but 3% of $10,000 is a lot of money for people, for a lot of people. And that's something that is very tempting and easy to do, but you need to keep in mind that in 4 or 5 months we're going to see interest rates for any kind of loan, any kind of debt go up, and that's something that people need to keep in mind now, because the decision is being made now, but you're going to pay the cost in 4 months.
Right. And that's the same thing with credit cards, right? Let's talk about credit cards really briefly. I know some people live off of credit cards. I remember a story of when we were selling our condo, we had some renters next door who were interested in purchasing it. And it was so weird because one of them actually worked for a bank, and you thought she'd be more financially savvy, but it goes to show you just because you're a bank teller doesn't mean that you're any more financially savvy than anybody else. But, they went to the bank to see if they could get pre-qualified or what they qualified for and whatever. And essentially she was told that in order to qualify for this apartment that she needed to get rid of her credit card. She'd have to pay it off, cancel the credit card, chop it up. And she would rather, this is her thinking, that nope, we use the credit card like when we travel and we buy stuff a lot in the credit card, it gives us time to pay it. And she would have rather maintain that credit card as opposed to getting rid of the credit card, which would, I'm sure, save her interest and probably cut back even in her overall spending, and actually have a home, right? Instead of paying rent, that she couldn't, in her head, see herself without having a credit card. So they made the decision to not even put in an application, get fully qualified for a loan, because they weren't able to break free from that credit card and the credit card debt. I thought that was always wild. But when you were just talking about how you're making purchases now, you're going to pay for them later, maybe sometimes even end up paying more for them. What advice do you give people about delayed debt, delayed gratification as well, right? When they're using things like credit to make purchases.
Yeah, it's probably not the most fun advice, but it really comes down to reading the fine print. And kind of the biggest thing that I can suggest is look at what type of interest rates you're going to be paying. Are they fixed or are they adjustable? That's going to make a big difference. because one of the things, one of the strategies that a lot of these, we'll pick on credit card companies. Why not? I think that they can withstand our withering criticism.
Yes.
But one of the things that they do is they'll make you like an introductory offer, right? So no payments, 0% interest for the first 6 months. But then after 6 months, the interest rate might jump up to 15, 20%. And so that's very tempting because, 0% interest, isn't this fabulous? I'm going to take that. But if you kind of have a different offer where you say, well, you're going to be paying 5% interest, but that 5% interest is locked in, it's fixed, it can't change. Well, most people are going to say, well, why would I take that 5% when I can pay 0? Right. But then that 0 all of a sudden becomes 15, 20%. Well, now that 5% that you had the opportunity to take, now that's looking a lot better. So that's one of the things that I would recommend for really any kind of debt. And this is something that I tell my students when they're dealing with education debt and education loans, is look at and compare, what they call adjustable rates versus fixed rates. And it's very, very tempting to take those adjustable rates, because a lot of the times they're going to seem too good to be true in some sense. They're going to offer you a low initial rate, then all of a sudden they're going to increase it. A lot of the times in the long run, it's going to be a lot better to take that at least initially higher fixed interest rate, because in the long run it's going to be cheaper because they can't change it. And that's also another strategy that you can take, because we talked a little bit about the Fed and them increasing interest rates and how that's going to increase interest rates for all kinds of debt. That applies just as much to the actions of a central bank as it would a credit card company. That if I have a fixed rate mortgage, then it doesn't necessarily matter what the Federal Reserve does, because my mortgage is locked in at 4% and it can't change. So it doesn't necessarily matter that if I were to take out a loan now and pay 7%, doesn't necessarily matter because I'm locked in at 5%. That's, and especially when we're talking about credit cards and financing any kind of debt, really, that's going to be the number one thing to look at is how they treat interest. That's and especially here in the United States with education loans and student loan debt. I mean, the interest rate and the interest paid, that's the killer, because you can pay, and this happened to me initially. This happens to my students all the time, that you're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars every single month, but in a lot of cases, your principal balance doesn't go down, and in some cases, your principal can actually go up. So why are you paying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars and nothing is happening, nothing's changing? It's interest. So if that's the key thing that I think people really need to kind of take into consideration is how interest is financed and treated on any kind of debt, whether it's cars, houses, credit cards, whatever. Understanding how the interest is going to work is going to be a big thing for people.
Very, very interesting. And I think too that it's one of those things where, as someone myself who's made really poor decision with credit cards when I was younger, it kind of made me afraid as an adult to even have a credit card. But when you do get one, you recognize that, you know what, only spend what you can afford to pay back every single month. If you find that you're spending, you get a credit card, they're like, oh yeah, we'll give you 15, 20, 30, even $30,000. Like I see people excited, like, oh, my bank just gave me a credit card with this huge limit on it. And I think to myself, oh boy, that sounds like trouble, because if you can't afford to pay it off every single month, whatever you're using, you're paying a lot of really high interest rates unnecessarily. So, and interest is one of those things that I think you don't appreciate how much you're actually paying in interest until you sit down and you work it out. And I've done just that. I've sat down and did the mortgage amortization calculator, and you see what you pay over the life of a mortgage, 15, 20 years. I mean, you're going to pay for that house 3 to 5 times, depending on the interest rate. And that's why every single extra payment, folks, listen, I'm on the hustle right now to pay off my mortgage early. Every single extra payment that you can make, it's still extra money, because it's not only reducing the principal of that humongous loan, it's also reducing the interest that you're paying as well.
Yeah, and that is true. And it sounds like, okay, making an additional $50 payment or $100 payment may not necessarily seem like much now, but interest grows exponentially. So that $50 in 2 years, that $50, if you hadn't paid it, might have ballooned to $300, a year or 2 years from now. So $50, $100, whatever the case may be, may not necessarily seem like much now, but because of how interest works and how it grows, that $50 or $100 now is going to save you $300 in a year, $500 in 2 years, whatever the case may be. So yeah, that's definitely something, a good piece of advice as well, is that it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of difference because, $50 now for a lot of people, $50 isn't too much. It seems almost insignificant, but because of how interest works and how it grows, that's definitely something that, is a good strategy.
Yeah. All right, folks, we do have a question here from Jonathan asking, what age are your students? So he teaches at USF, so they're university age. I've got a 6-year-old and I'm trying to teach her good sort of fiscal principles. Every time she wants me to buy something, I tell her no, mommy doesn't have the money. Sometimes I'm telling a little bit of white lie because I might theoretically have it, but I don't have it to spend on that item, right? I'm choosing to spend it on other things. She goes to the grocery store. She thinks she can pick up all these items. I'm like, no. Today you can pick up one item only. Last night I asked her to, like I said, she's only 6, but she wanted some little, I don't even know what it's called, this little chocolate thing. Comes like a little Easter egg. And I said to her, well, how much does it cost? Because even at that age, making a child think that they can just pick up an item and not think about the cost of it is sending the wrong message. So I said to her, how much does it cost? And she's like, let me go see. And you know what she did? This is so funny, Dr. Snipes kids. She went back and looked at it. She comes back and she said it's 3+ because at like age, like 3-year-olds plus. And so I said to her, that's not the cost of it. That's the age appropriateness of this item. It says age 3+. That's not how much it's going to cost. And you know what? There was no price on it. When I went and looked, there was no price, but they had them placed at the corner. This is again, merchandising for grocery store. They had them placed at multiple corners throughout the store, right? So by the time we got to the third one at another corner, I finally saw the price on it. I said, okay, this is what a price tag looks like. And, that's money. So, what are your recommendations for trying to teach children, and how early can you start to teach children about being fiscally responsible?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly do it with 5-6-year-olds. Absolutely. Yeah. I have a daughter who's 9, and what I do is something similar to what you do. Is I say, we've got $20. You can spend that on what you want, but we have $20. If you want a toy that costs $20, okay. Or you can get, we would go to, some of the big box stores around here. I mean, so you can get a toy for $20, or you could get, 3 shirts for $20. And that's a choice that you have to make. But we have $20, we have $20. And that's something that I think that most kids are absolutely going to be able to understand, that I have a limit, right? That I can't necessarily go above that limit. So what it does is it does give them that freedom to pick what they want, to let them make their choices, but they're bound and they're constrained by how much they can spend. And that's exactly that's exactly what adults want. That's what adults do. We want the freedom to make the choices that we want, but we also have to acknowledge that we're bound by income. We're bound by prices. And so that's the strategy that I take. Is I say, we have $20. You can spend it on what you want. You have to look at what the prices are, figure out how much you can spend and what you can buy. And that's the approach that I take. And I think the approach you take is wonderful as well. There's not necessarily really kind of a wrong way to do it. I think that the earlier you can kind of expose children to this kind of thinking I think it's important. And it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of drilled into them constantly.
Yes.
But I would definitely agree that kind of the earlier the better. Just making them conscious of how kind of buying and budgeting and how all those things work.
Yeah. And that the money doesn't come from thin air because, of course, all children just see you with money. In fact, they don't even see us with money anymore. They just see us with card because I'm not a parent or a person that carries around cash. So my daughter just thinks that card, which is actually a debit card, and I had to explain to her it's linked to a bank account that has money in it. But she just thinks, oh, just use that card. She's like, just use that. And I'm just like, yeah, but where does the money come from that's on there? And she's like, what do you mean? So like trying to make these connections in their little brains early on, I think is really, really important because I tell you what, they really do believe that these things like money grows on trees, as our parents used to say, and it doesn't grow on trees, and you've got to make them understand that you have to work for money, and that's how you get it. You get up, early in the mornings, you go to work, and you do certain things in order to earn money. And so I'm instilling in her that, oh, you'd like to get something, you have to earn it, right? I'm not paying you cash yet. But I just got these cards, this is one of my Amazon purchases. It's like a little punch card because it gives them something tangible that they can hold on to, which I think is a great idea to teach little lessons. And so, you want to go to the toy store. We have to limit how often you can go because she'd be there every day if she could. And we decide what it's going to be, what you're going to get, what the budget is. And then you do certain things, not the ordinary things that are expected of you, but you do something above and beyond. You get your punch card. You do all of your chores to high standard. You get a little punch. And so I'm making her earn her monetary credits or, credits to be able to purchase an item, because in the real world, that's actually how it works, right? You get rewarded for doing the right thing in the right way.
Yeah. This is a whole other avenue of conversation that we can have, is that kind of as a lot of the economy and a lot of society is kind of moving towards kind of everything being on a card, kind of moving towards this cashless society. And we're seeing that more and more and more and more. And I think that that's going to be interesting and potentially problematic because of, again, kind of all these things that we've talked about, kind of the psychology of money and the emotions and, do we really need it? How can we afford it? And financing and all these different things that, when I go and I use a credit card for something, I'm getting it now, but no cash left in my pocket. I don't have to pay for it now. I pay for it in a month. So I get the consumption now. I get all of the benefit now, but I don't get any of the cost now. And that's a very slippery slope. And I think that's a fabulous idea that you give your daughter something tangible to hold, because then you can physically see something changing. But as we become kind of increasingly reliant on credit cards, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of benefits to that. It makes transactions a lot easier, makes them a lot quicker. But at the same time, we're not seeing, these green pieces of paper that we carry around in our pocket. We're not seeing those green pieces of paper physically leave our wallet. So we don't feel that. We don't feel that initial hit. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see kind of how society and how economies, fold out as we become increasingly cashless.
Yeah.
Because again, we get that initial dopamine boost of consumption now, but wait, no money came out of my pocket? Fantastic.
Interesting. All right, folks, you've been listening to Dr. Snipes. We thank you so much for joining us this morning. Gabby, a final comment for this segment, says, that's how I did my Christmas shopping for my kids this year. Told them that they have $100 and can get whatever they want once it does not surpass the $100. So good strategy there. And just as an aside, when we're talking about interest rates and so forth, it doesn't just impact us. It just doesn't impact the US. Even in the UK interest rates raised to the highest level in 14 years. So everyone is kind of in the same boat. The Bank of England has decided to raise the UK interest rates to their highest level for 14 years, as it also battles to stem the soaring prices. It went from 3.5, it increased them to 3.5% from 3% recently, marking the 9th time in a row that it has hiked interest rates. So again, following pretty much the exact same pattern that the US has. And so what that's going to mean for a lot of us is higher mortgage payments for some homeowners and those with loans at a time when many people are struggling with the cost of living. Folks, talk to your banks. The one good advice I can give you is I've got a fixed interest rate from actually when the pandemic started. My folks over at CNB, they're good at that bank. If you want a good mortgage advisor, go talk to Andrew Williams and the whole team over there. Andrew said to me, We're giving people the option because this pandemic is, not something we've ever experienced before. People might be having job losses and we don't know what's coming. So we're giving the people, our customers, an option to lock in a fixed rate. Now, they don't do long-term lock-in rates, but I think they do. I think it's either like 2 or 3 years or whatever. And we jumped on it. We're like, okay, let's lock it in because there was this uncertainty about what the future held because of COVID. The irony of it, nothing happened during COVID. There were no interest rates during COVID. It's when we started to come out of the pandemic that the feds were like, whoa, we got to start putting these measures in place. And literally the month that we, like our 2 years was up, and we said, oh, well, nothing's happened. Maybe we don't need this fixed interest rate anymore. The feds came and knocking, and I ran back to the bank and said, I've changed my mind, lock it back in. So, there are definitely things that you can do. And the sooner you get on it and lock it in, obviously, the better for you.
Yep.
Dr. Snipes, thank you.
No, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
I know you were going to say something. I could see you were thinking about saying something. Go right ahead.
No, I was just going to totally agree with you and reinforce that. Keep an eye on interest. That's how that's something that a lot of people don't pay attention to. That's an easy way to get kind of bogged down. And a fixed rate that may seem higher at first is almost always going to be the better way to go. Because exactly like you said, for the first 2 years, you're like, why am I locked into this higher interest rate? Well, once things open back up, just like you said, what happened? Back up go those interest rates. So yeah, fixed is almost always better than adjustable.
Yeah. All right, folks. So there you've heard it from our expert this morning. Dr. Snipes, thank you so much, and have a wonderful and Merry Christmas to you and your family. And I'm sure that we'll have you on next year to talk about more as the economy continues to do some interesting things, and we'll keep an eye on it. We want to have a minimum wage discussion, which I think we'll pull you into next year because it looks like our government is going to have a referendum on a couple of issues, and they are looking at not necessarily from the referendum perspective, but looking at increasing the minimum wage. And we want to talk about how that actually has an impact, if any, on the economy, which I'm sure it does. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you being available to us, and all the best for the Christmas season.
All right, same to you.
All right. Thanks very much. All right, folks. So that's Dr. Snipes from USF. And you guys know what's up next, honey child. We got some prizes to give away. You guys were on the money yesterday. So we're going to do some more trivia and some more giveaways this morning. So let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break.
'Tis the season to advertise your business's holiday specials and sales events. Don't miss out on Cayman's #1 social media, talk show, and website platforms to spread your message to thousands of people locally and abroad. Christmas dining and entertainment venues? Call us today. Retail shopping for special friends and family? Call us today. Christmas rentals and accommodations? Call us today. Cayman's #1 news platform is the best way to reach the largest available audience, resulting in more sales for your business. Contact CMR today at sales@caymanmarlroad.com or 324-1612.